So let's pick up from our demo there. And again, you see there's the OpenGL representation. There's the anaglyph renderer. If you don't check on the anaglyph renderer, it's going to absolutely render out right and left eye just by default. So you're going to have that. That is the preferred method for high-end output, and everything is going to be calculated from in relation to that center camera. So there's a lot of really great math that we have some brilliant, 2 brilliant people, 3 brilliant people, 4 brilliant people actually. 4 brilliant people that worked on that, and I mean, Jamie knows that I love the team. Also, we have doctorates of physics on the team. We have some brilliant people, and I cannot wait to work with them every week. It's just a fun thing. Linear color space workflows are our next topic. This isn't quite as fun on the surface as all this other stuff because it sounds kind of like boring, or I don't know. But linear color space workflow is a really big advancement actually, because what it means is that for a long term, I mean, did you guys ever see Relic, that horror movie where the creature was in the sewer? Yeah. Now, I hope nobody here worked on it, because I liked the movie. It was fun. But when you watch it on TV, I was watching it on the Sci-Fi Channel about a week ago or something, it was, the creature doesn't marry in those scenes when you take it to NTSC. Mm-hmm. It like jumps out and smacks you across the face and, I'm CG, I don't live in this world. Because obviously, they did not have linear color space workflow they were working with. Because there's such a difference between the shades of shadow to light with their CG renders and what was in the play that they couldn't have seen it. And it wasn't the artist's fault, it wasn't the compositor's fault, it was that they weren't working with linear color space workflow, they couldn't see it. They couldn't see it. And when it's projected on a movie projector, even a digital projector, the latitude there kind of evens things out in a way that NTSC is very unforgiving. And it clips things into a more rigid gradation than you really see. It's kind of like the Star Wars stuff with self-traveling maps in there. That's the same concept. So linear color space workflow basically takes a long-standing issue that we have all had. And I remember back in the days we were working on, Max Steel and Starship Troopers and all that stuff with Netter Digital and Foundation and all those things we were doing, Jen, over in the valley here. But this is the problem that we had. We would get a scene, and we would set our lights the way that you would want to set them as a cinematographer in the real world, and then you'd see nothing. You'd see like a beautiful light, you'd see nothing. Like, well, obviously my lights are too low, even though they're 100%. I got to take them up there and go crazy. So then we pump those lights up to 250, 300, whatever it takes to give the great thing. The problem is we get like the sun surface, the nuclear hotspot that loses all detail and highlights. But we light our scene, thank goodness we can see things, but this is nothing like the real world. You just don't have that loss of detail in the human eye because we have such a wide range of latitude. So the problem is that when we try to compensate, we would actually ruin our shots and make them look really CG because the compositors can't do anything with that. They can't pull anything out of that. There's nothing there. So they're going to get like a real CG-looking effect to this kind of stuff. You lose detail and highlights, you lose detail and shadows. So the problem is that what you want to see is something like this. You want to see a nice, reasonable, real-world setting on the lights, and you want it to light your scene the way that if you really had a light bulb there, the way that it really would light the scene. Because we have inverse light fall-off in LightWave. Why would it not work the way that the real world does? Well, the reason why it didn't, the reason why other applications don't, is because internally in the render engine, they're calculating in linear, full floating point linear space. We are seeing and displaying things on an sRGB monitor color space, which has a curve that it applies to that. It corrects things for us, and everything mostly on monitors is in sRGB. Well, you're looking at something and making a value choice, and the renderer's looking at it and seeing it totally different. So your choices that you're making as an artist for a long time, all of our choices have been wrong. All of our choices have been through a weird Coke bottle glass that we can't really see what the renderer's seeing. And that is a real tragedy. Now that I understand this, I'm mad. I want to go back. I'm serious. I want to go back to some of my shots and redo it, and refix them. Because I remember struggling with this on some of them.
That's the fault of LA people that we did that, by the way.
Okay.
People kept bugging that cigarette. We need that.
We need it, yeah. So, we have implemented this in LightWave, and the color pickers, the surface colors, the procedural textures, the gradients, the nodes, backdrop colors, and fog, all of those places where you'd be making these choices, you can pick the linear color space or other color space choices. It's also important for image inputs, because when you have texture maps on imagine you're setting it for the scene, but what if your texture map is coming in with some crazy, sRGB or some other type of curve applied that you don't know? So you're seeing things in a way. Here's the panel where it shows you your choices of linear, sRGB, Cineon. You can load a custom lookup table. So it works really good for film output, those kinds of things, and you can have all that supported. And also in the images, you can, per image, you can set its color space, which is super useful. Like just what I was talking about. If you have a stray image that's in some, it's in linear or sRGB or whatever, you need to be able to adjust that per texture map, because it really is going to influence what you're doing. What that means is you'll be sitting there working on your sRGB monitor, looking at your texture map of the wood, and you'll go, oh, that's pretty white, pine wood. I gotta do something about that. And then you'll light it, and you'll do all this stuff to it, and what the renderer sees is that. Because the renderer is rendering in linear. So the way that we correct for that is we take the sRGB curve, and we do an inverse curve to give you the linear representation, which is what the render engine sees. So when you see it as an artist now, when you see that, you would make a different choice than you would if you were looking at that. That's just the fact. That's the way that's the basic application of what this is. That you're actually able to see what the render engine is seeing. So now you're on the same page with the render engine. And this is a transformative evolution in the industry. Everybody is going to support this. Everybody is supporting this. They're trying to catch up with what we've implemented, because we were the first to do an end-to-end easy implementation. If any of you use 3D Studio Max or whatever, they have some bits and parts of this. It's like jumping through the craziest hoops I've ever seen in my life to really understand it. Our implementation is really simple. I really like it. So we've also been working closely with Eden and Zoic and DarkSide and our other key accounts. They've been using this for over a year already, rendering. So they're very happy with it. In fact, like I said, the Iron Maiden music video was rendered all of this, and that's been out for a while now. So this basically conforms your inputs, your texture maps, all of that, with what your render sees, so that your output can be exactly calibrated and give you the best absolute latitude, detail, and everything that you can get from your images. Look at that. That was a 24-bit image of render of Eddie. So cool. All the details and the shadows and the highlights. This is still in a 24-bit format. It wasn't taken to expanded range. You get all the details and those highlights and those shadows. It gives the compositor way more flexibility, because if you remember when we were looking at the image that was linear, it kind of looked a little bit murky or kind of muddy. It's like raw. Anybody do digital photography? When you shoot and it applies a color curve to it, sometimes just right out of the camera, you respond naturally like, oh, that's a better image. But if you really look at it, it's losing detail and it's got that curve applied. You want to keep everything in raw, which looks a little bit more blah, but it keeps all of the detail in the entire range, and that allows you in compositing to really go to town and be crazy with it. So it gives you, in the final analysis, if you're a professional that's trying to milk every ounce of look or detail out of your images, it allows you to do that. If you bake in this stuff, which is kind of where we were before the linear, then you don't have detail. You can't really manipulate it too far before you start losing things, and you can't gain back detail you've lost in highlights, for example. So it's a really cool thing for image output and for all of us. For print, for animation, for anything. It really changes the whole process. So, any questions on linear before we move on? Yeah.
It's linearizing all the imagery that you're pulling in for your scene. Can you? Is it necessary to linearize images that are used strictly for bump maps or displacement maps?
Well, if there's a range of light and dark in those images, and you're going to clip and not have detail, so that your bump map may have a clipped highlight or a clipped dark, yeah, but you can't get that back if it's already gone. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So you have to. That's why you have the choice to go in on a per image basis and set it, because you want to, because you want to know what color space your image is coming from. Which before we didn't even think about that. I mean, you can imagine it's kind of scary to think now that we were using texture maps from all over the place. They could have had different color, space, the curves applied, and we didn't even think about it.
Right.
So you just use whatever it was, and then you have this multiple error on top of multiple error applied to your decision-making process, and then internally the render engine even saw it different. So, it was like a Russian roulette of what you're going to get.
And then when it was sent to the monitor, it's not different.
Yeah.
That's the thing when I was figuring out what to do, was like, oh my God, everything's wrong.
It is. I mean, that's the problem, is that it's really all been wrong. And we've all been trying to do the best we can with getting wrong information from all over the place. So now this really brings it into a conformed state.
Does LightWave tell you what color space that particular image is?
If it can.
If it can, okay.
Some things have tags, it'll tell you what it is.
Right.
So one of the genius minds that we have on our team is in the room, and she was the key person behind the linear color space workflow. So if you have any questions about that, Jamie is the person.
Yeah. Oh, it was I kept, just month after month, I kept redoing it and redoing it and redoing it, so it was really simple.
Yeah. So it's, we have looked at a lot of different ways of doing this, and, this is a very easy implementation. It just makes sense, it's logical, it's fast, it gives you what you want. So
it goes whatever color space it's in, to linear inside of LightWave, to output, the display device or your file. So, but everything inside the render engine has to be linear. So the thing is there's mappings to and from. So you're mapping from sRGB typically to linear, and you're taking linear and you're mapping it to sRGB. There's like these to and from things. And your monitor's sRGB, so your OpenGL is done in linear and then displayed to you in sRGB.
If you're importing an image that's already linearized, will LightWave detect that, or are you going to still put an inverse curve on that?
For the images that have tags, it will detect it. Else you have to hand set it in the image editor.
Okay.
The image editor will come up and it'll say default, which is a panel of defaults.
Right.
Or it'll come up and, like if you read a JPEG, it'll say sRGB, because it knows it.
What gamma curve is it applying, or gamma level? Is it 1.2, or, as far as output?
It was I got the equations from Digital Domain.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and the thing is I put it in and they were really happy. It's just not a gamma curve, there's just 1.2, there's 4 variables in the equation. So the thing is, so it does all 4 properly.
Huh.
And the reason it says CIE XYZ, that's for OpenEXR. OpenEXR saved their things in CIE.
Okay.
So everybody's like, what's that for? That's OpenEXR. That's what that means.
All right. That's good enough.
She's smart.
Well, I didn't know all this stuff when I started it.
So, new data interchange tools are really important. I don't think everybody really fully yet understands the strength of that. It's actually been really a fundamental change, especially in NDD. We've updated NDD. In NDD we have, that panel, people don't remember probably what was in that panel. They probably have in their mind what was in Point Oven and these other tools, because they had really cool strengths in those plugins. We had stuff that was like, the variable settings for frame offset and all that didn't make any sense. It was like in some other thought process. I don't even understand what it was. Now,
in seconds.
Yeah, it was. Now it's in frames. So if you go in there, you have a standard. If you want to start 30 frames earlier, you put -30, and your playback of that is going to be -30. If you want to do a replay speed, it is going to be 100%. It's going to play 100%. 50% is going to play half speed. All of those things have kind of been conformed to the same type of measurement, so that it's pretty easy to figure out exactly what your effect is. The other thing is we've added per object and global world application in the pull down, so that if you're applying, if you're going back and forth between Maya or LightWave or Houdini or whatever, and you want that object to be exactly in world space where it was recorded when it was actually being deformed, and to never change, you record it and apply it in world space, and it will always be exactly where you recorded it. You can't move it. You can't translate the object. You can't scale it. You can't rotate on top of it. If you do it on a per object basis, you can actually apply the MDD and rotate